There was an important segment on CNN on Wednesday night, obviously not important in the content of its own argument, but important in what it represents, an increasingly authoritarian entitlement a portion of this country feels in exerting its will over everybody else. People who believe unquestionably, I am such a good person, in fact, so good that I should dominate everybody else's life and force them into submission using either the levers of state power or just good old-fashioned social mockery and ostracism. See, it's not bullying if I'm bullying. That's another way to think about it, because I'm me and I'm a hero. Sure, it sounds contradictory and inconsistent, but so is every premise in this argument. Here's Don Lemon explaining to Chris Cuomo why your right to evaluate what goes in your body yourself is mistaken.
People talk about, well, I don't know what's in the shot, Chris. I don't know what's in that shot.
I'll tell you what's not in it.
Hold on,
a tracking device.
You know what they get shots in nowadays? In their rear ends to make it bigger. They're getting shots in their face. They don't know what's in Botox. Nothing wrong with Botox.
People don't know what they eat,
Look,
what they drink,
I tried
what
it once,
they smoke.
Yeah, you morons don't read anything about the products you consume. Therefore, keep being morons and don't read anything about this product either, and also consume it uncritically? Why isn't the proper conclusion do better research and evaluation? Why isn't the proper conclusion think more critically for yourself? Because if we're all idiots for not reading carefully, you can't present not reading carefully as a good reason to take the shot. But it's not about critical thinking. That's a front. It's not about personal choice. That's a front. It is not about the efficacy of these shots. That is a front. It's just about controlling you. That is the only common thread to weave all of these contradictions together. And so you get all sorts of confused thoughts, like Chris Cuomo saying he just wants to move on with his life and live freely, but he can't do that until he forces you into compliance.
Most of all, the idea that the majority cannot be held by the tyranny of a minority.
Yeah.
Their stubbornness has to be their own consequence at some point, and the rest of us have to be able to live life.
Yeah.
The tyranny of the minority. To do what? To make their own decisions and to live their own lives? That very small group of people over there is controlling me by not doing what I tell them to do. This is completely incoherent nonsense. If the people doing things you don't like are a minority, it's very easy just to walk away from them, especially when that supposedly tyrannical minority wants you to do that. Their stubbornness has to be their own consequence. Yes, we agree. The rest of us have to be able to live our own lives. Yes, we agree. So shut the hell up and have at it. We fully intend to leave you alone. So what's the problem here? The problem is, of course, it's not about their own freedom. It's about removing yours. Don Lemon makes it clear. If you can't follow the logic of the argument, that's because there is none. He's just flailing at anything to conclude what is already pre-concluded. He's smart, you're dumb. He's a good guy, you're a bad guy, therefore he is righteous in coming after you, or at least encouraging the guy listening to him waiting for his personal pizza at the airport to do it for him.
We have to stop coddling people when it comes to this and the vaccine, saying, oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are. The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind, because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind.
If you're an oppressed majority, you are either a propagandist lying about that oppression for political leverage, or you are exceptionally weak and pathetic. Both are perfectly plausible explanations that can exist together, and in this case, both probably do. The result of this thinking is self-righteous political manipulation and bullying by exceptionally weak people. Because coincidentally, right on cue, a man at Target this week took Don's advice and demonstrated exactly that. Now, of course, I don't know that this man listened to Don and then conducted his bidding, but he did give us a great example of what exactly this behavior looks like. It did not produce unity. It did not produce moving on. It did not overcome any vaccine resistance. In fact, it almost certainly hardened it. No claimed objective was actually achieved, except the only consistent but often unstated one, just harassing you into submission. It's not clear when or where this confrontation took place, other than at a Target store sometime recently, but the clip was posted Wednesday on Twitter and pulled millions of views by week's end. An apparently unmasked woman was shopping when she was confronted by a masked and vaccine button-wearing hero. And if there's any hope about the coming tyranny, it's that at least it's coming not from the iron fist, but from the very soft belly of a guy like this, as though Crocodile Dundee let himself go and became Harry Dunn from Dumb and Dumber. He does at least have the physical strength to hold his arm up, though, as he walks around the store pointing at this woman like he's the evil monkey from Family Guy. And like any good progressive, his first claim to authority is his wife's authority over him. He repeatedly claims that his wife is an infectious disease expert, and so you must do as he commands.
So my wife is a doctor who specializes in infectious disease. So, do you think that she just doesn't know what she's talking about?
It's her choice.
Well, she selected you as a life partner, then yes, I would say her judgment is suspect. But that's if this story is even to be believed at all. My wife is a very prestigious medical professional who couldn't be here today because she's very busy saving the world while I recreationally harass women at Target. If there ever was such a true story, he does look like a guy ridiculous enough to live that out. But given the lack of a ring on either hand, I'm going to choose doubt on this one. And even if it is true, are we not allowed to say your wife's a quack? Because if she endorses this behavior, then yes, she's a quack, and I doubt she knows what she's talking about in much of any context. Just because a bully is a doctor, just because the scrubs are embroidered bully MD, doesn't mean that she's right or moral. But appealing to his imaginary wife's authority might actually be the best argument this guy has, because the rest of his case isn't just unlikely. It's actually contradictory, incoherent nonsense. He says it's all of our jobs to come together and shame those who don't comply.
It's not your job.
You can't harass her.
My job to enforce. It's
What are you
all of
even
our
in here
job
for?
as a community to come together.
You're not
and
even
make
shopping.
sure
You're
that
going
people are
around to
shamed.
harass people.
And make sure that people are shamed
He was
when they
following
put the
me. He
rest
won't
of
leave
us
me
at
alone.
risk.
We have to unify through ostracism, if that's not paradoxical enough. He then argues the exact opposite to protect himself. Hey man, don't intervene with me. I'm very busy intervening with someone.
You're an idiot.
No. So you're going to insult me now. So my wife is a...
Leave her alone.
My wife
God,
is
leave
a
her
specialist in
alone. Here.
infectious diseases.
Oh, is she?
What are you doing? This is between the two of us.
Go away. This is just between the two of us, but also all of us need to come together. We need to shame people, but also, how dare you insult me? This woman's physical presence is a threat to all of us, but also, I'm going to follow her around in very close proximity. You can't make fun of this guy any better than he makes fun of himself. He's arguing against himself every other sentence, including arguing against the supposedly authoritative medical wisdom of his wife. At one point, another woman tells him that breakthrough cases are a risk, and he argues those are incredibly rare and nothing to worry about.
My mom was vaccinated and still ended up in the hospital with COVID. It's her choice.
Yeah, well, it's very, very unusual.
Well, if it's very, very unusual, then why are you, as such a proudly vaccinated man, so concerned about it? If your protection as a vaccinated person is very, very usual, then you have nothing to worry about and you can go about running your good boy errands for your hero wife. The guy's biggest humiliation comes when his claim as self-appointed target policy enforcement falls apart. This whole time he's been saying that he's just doing the good guy work of making sure that Target's rules are followed.
It's her choice. Just leave her alone.
No, there's a store requirement and a state requirement. It's not
a
a
mandate.
Until Target security intervenes with him, and then suddenly Target's authority is illegitimate and must be argued with. Right, so it's not actually about Target's authority over its own property. It is just about your supposed moral authority over everyone. Everything else be damned. Left with nothing else to argue, this guy is reduced to the same Lemonian screeches. I'm good, you're bad, so hear my virtue hollers.
You're a bad American.
I am. I totally am. And I voted for Trump.
Yeah, you're a bad person.
Me too.
You're a bad person for doing that.
Well, that's a very timely thing for him to say. If you didn't know, Friday was Constitution Day, the anniversary of the signing of the document. And I bet if the men who wrote it could see this clip as the future realization of their vision, they probably would have grabbed another quill and started over. The idea that this guy represents the American spirit is delusional. He's pathetically weak. He insists on blind compliance with authority. He imposes his will on others. He is everything that American philosophy opposes, and I bet in any other context, it's not something he wants to uphold anyway. Say on your gun rights, or your speech rights, or any other classic American constitutional or philosophical values. I suspect if you ask him about being a good American in those contexts, suddenly his explanation gets filled with a lot more buts and actuallys. It's only when he can weaponize it to browbeat you into compliance that suddenly being a good American is of crucial importance to him. But being a good American in its purest form means leaving people the hell alone and giving those who don't the finger. Being a good American means being nothing like this guy. And yeah, this is mostly just a ridiculous, stupid scene that's fun to laugh at, but this encounter does have an important lesson to teach us. It explains exactly why, despite the vaccine, despite the treatments, despite the ability of every individual to protect himself, despite the biological reality that this virus is here to stay with no magic wand to erase it, this nonsense continues with no end in sight. It's because despite that stated desire to go back to normal, these people have no such thing. Notice how every single one of his arguments falls apart. His aggression is not about the science of immunity because he doesn't care about natural immunity or even his own protection as a vaccinated person. His aggression is not about enforcing Target store policy because he argues store policy as soon as he disagrees with it. His aggression isn't even about doing his wife's bidding, though he does seem like exactly the sort of guy who would do whatever his wife says without limitation, but we don't know because his wife is too busy treating Bigfoot's unicorn dust infection to tell us herself. All of that claimed reasoning is just a smokescreen to build and maintain power for a guy who otherwise would have none. In any other context, a guy picking a public fight like this, especially with a woman, would earn him a fight that'll make him even more goofy looking than he already is. This is the only context in which he can claim righteous authority over others and have some people buy it as plausibly right. In yesterday's society, he's just a weirdo stalker. But in today's society, there's a good chunk of people who view him as an upstanding citizen. He gets power out of this deal. He gets nothing out of normal. So if you ever wonder why the same people who comply with every mandate that'll get us back to normal apparently have no interest in ever getting back to normal, why they still put on the mask after getting the shot, why they simultaneously argue that the shot is the only way out of this, but also insufficient to get us out of this, why they simultaneously say they have both crippling fear and complete confidence, why nothing they say holds any level of consistency or logic or solid reasoning, that's why. It's just the power grab. It's just an arrangement that buys power for people who otherwise have no legitimate claim to it and no ability to get it and would be laughed away for trying to grab it. Under any natural scenario, this guy is an unintentional comedian at best and a stalker at worst. But in this context, he's a hero for doing the one and only thing he excels at, nothing. This act is just a mechanism to flip his worthlessness into value while putting in none of the work to actually do that in reality. So of course he's going to hang on to that because going back to normal means him going back to having no purpose until he reflects inward and builds that purpose for himself. And that is much harder work. It's much easier to yell critically at other people than it is to yell critically at yourself. So whether it's Lemon or Cuomo or just some aging Carrot Top stunt double, understand that is the common element for all of these people arguing that they won't be free until they control you. It's only that last part that matters. Everything else is a fraud. Their own safety, their own freedom, their own self-determination are all perfectly available to them, but they're still unsatisfied because these things aren't actually what they're after. Control of you is. And if anything actually should be shamed and mocked, it's exactly that thirst for power. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Gab, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.